so much for joining me today for this first video of my December Daily 2018 album. So for today I thought I'll start with the intention page, and it's going to be a kind of crafty-ish one. I'm going to use a transparency to try and create a tree using fabric that I've got in my stash. So before we start, I thought I'd show you how I printed out the journaling. So my plan is to print out journaling in a kind of Christmas tree shape. And so what I did is I first go into Photoshop, and then I open a new page. So go on the top left and then click on File, New, and then click on a page size that you want. In my case, it was an A4 size. So now I have an empty page, and the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on the pen tool, which is on the left there, as you can see on the panel of tools. And then I'm going to choose a point, which is a point, I think it was about 2 inches into the page, and then down by about 4 inches. And to the left of that, 2 inches to the left of that, and down by 4 inches, I think 4 or 3 inches, and then go on the other side of that by 4 inches, and then go up and click onto the original point. So I'm creating a tree, a shape that looks like a tree. Then I clicked on a type tool, which is on the left side, on the left panel again. Yep, so click on that, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over this triangle piece on the page, and I clicked on it. And then what I need to do next is simply to type up my journaling. So I type up my journaling here. You can obviously change the font type, the size, etc. on this as well, just on the top left there, on the panel there. And mind you, some of the panels, the configurations of different panels where they are would be different for different computers, and perhaps different operating system. I'm using a Mac, and they're probably going to look different, but in general it is as simple as this. Then I click OK on the top there, and the next thing I did is I'm going to remove the visibility of the shape. As you can see, I'm hovering the mouse around that I button. I'm going to click that, and then as you can see, the triangle disappears. Now the next thing we'll do is to print. So I went File, Print, and then that is it. So I'm now going to go back onto my workspace, and I'll start working on the page. So now I'm back on my workspace. The next thing I need to do is choose a bunch of fabric, ribbons, etc. to use on my page. But the first thing I'm going to do here is, as I said, I printed out my journaling, and it looks like, as you can see there, in the way that as I showed you earlier. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut up, trim my journaling into a shape of a triangle, similar to what I did for on my computer. Now obviously you can actually, instead of actually measuring it out this way, I could have put a triangle shape on top of the journaling, and then so I don't have to do this. I don't actually mind doing it manually, largely because I want to be able to see it and have that freedom to actually choose the size as I go. Sometimes if I print the triangle itself, I feel like it's too small or too big. Well, it's usually, if it's too big, it's not too bad. If it's too small, then it's usually I have to reprint it again. So I thought I'll do that manually in terms of just trimming. It's not too difficult. And so what I'm doing here is now I'm just kind of trimming. I'm measuring it a little bit, just slightly, to make sure that they're all kind of even in terms of size. And when I typed up my journaling, I essentially divided into different sections, different paragraphs, so in a way so that I can actually cut them up and use different ribbons and different fabric to actually use on, to actually mix up the fabric and kind of create a texture in a way for the page. And now I'm just kind of working out whether I want to kind of trim it further a little bit, just to make sure that some of these strips I can use a ribbon to cover the other side of the transparency. So I'm essentially selecting a bunch of ribbons and fabric that I have in my stash. I didn't buy anything new. Some of these stuff are really old, so Cosmo Cricket and Making Memories. So Making Memories still exists. I'm not actually sure if it's still a company. But Cosmo Cricket, I believe, is no longer a company, and so I essentially just got stuff in my stash. I had this for years, and so I'm just selecting a bunch of things. So that's the fabric I've got, just felt fabric I've got in my stash, and now I'm just choosing kind of ribbons that I want to use. I guess my strategy is to select different things of different textures, different colors, and just kind of to make it a bit more, have to have more variety in what I use. Now I'm just kind of trimming this up, and I'm using my Fiskars guillotine trimmer, and this has been great for me. I've used it for a long time and it's still sharp, so I highly recommend it if you want to get one or thinking of getting one. The only problem with this one is probably it's a bit small, but if you don't mind it being small, you only cut a small piece of paper most of the time, then it's a really good one. I think my next one, I'm probably going to try to get an A4, a trimmer that would cut something like an A4 or letter size page. So once again, I'm selecting a fabric that I've got in my stash. These are essentially fabrics that I had for a long time. I used to do a bit of quilting, a bit of bits and pieces. So I've got, things that I kept. And now I'm just choosing things that, working out what, I want to use a couple more ribbons, like a couple more ribbons, and then I guess what I'm trying to do is to make sure that the strip is not too big for the ribbon, so that, if I turn the page onto the other side, the ribbon will actually cover the strip of paper. So I'm going to use these strips here on the front side, so the front side of the transparency, and then I'm going to use the journaling. I'm going to put the paper strips on the other side of the transparency. So now I'm just kind of I'm choosing my fabric really, so I'm moving in and out of just kind of working out. And then I'm going to sew most of this on, and just kind of making sure that the strip is not too big. And now I'm just kind of trimming out the ends of the strips, the fabric strips, so that it kind of correspond or looking like a Christmas tree. So I'm just kind of trimming this down a little bit. I don't want them to be too big. And I'm just kind of roughing it up a little bit so that it looks, because I didn't trim all the sides, and I just want to make sure that all sides look even. And then I am trimming and trimming and trimming in this way. And it's one of those process really that, it's not the actual, work itself is not difficult, but it is about trying to work out what is the right, what's the right texture and how you want to put that together. The next thing, as you can see here, I'm just kind of sewing that down and using my my sewing machine. I'm using gold thread, as you can see there, and I am sewing that down. And the next thing I'm doing here is I simply adhering my journaling onto the other side of the transparency. And for the ribbons or the strips of fabric that I actually didn't sew down, I use the red line tape, I think that's what it's called, to adhere that down, and it is working really well. It's stuck down fully, and so yeah. The next thing I'm doing here is I'm using these wooden star wood veneer piece here, which is from Ali Edwards' main kit from December Daily main kit from last year, and I'm adhering that white one down. And on the other side, my plan is to add something, a similar star really, and put it a red one. But before that, I'm also going to be adhering a strip of these puffy sticker here, which is from the Felicity Jane kit. And I'm also going to be using a number of these, I guess, enamel dots from I think this is from the Jen Hatfield line. And I actually got this from the Hip Kit Club's, I believe it's the November kit. So I stuck that down, so just kind of similar colors really. And the next thing I'm doing here is I am going to use the same wooden piece, the wood veneer piece from Ali Edwards' main kit, and I am putting the acrylic paint, so the red acrylic paint from Jenny Brolin, I believe it's a relatively old, so it's any red acrylic paint would work there. So yeah, I let that dry, and then I decided I just don't think it's bright enough. So what I'm doing here is I'm just gonna use the Zing embossing powder, so the red one, so red glitter, to kind of brighten up this piece a little bit. So first I added the embossing, the Versamark ink, sorry, and then I put the Zing glitter embossing powder on it. Now I'm just going to heat emboss using my heat gun. And then I let it dry a little bit. I tend to heat emboss in a box, largely because, especially for things like that's glittery, I don't want to get all over my workspace. So I have a small essentially scrapbooking pizza box, which I kept from one of the kits that came in the mail. And that is it, you guys. So I'd adhere that down using my glossy accent, and here's some close up. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!